you haven't noticed, we got new mugs.
Yay, new mugs.
So, and it was actually kind of accidental. We were going to reorder the gray ones and they were out. Like bistro cups are really popular. I didn't realize this until actually, I think the other day when I have 2 coffee cups that I love at home and they're both bistro mugs. And I didn't realize they were bistro mugs until I was like, oh, we were out of bistro mugs. But then we found these and they may look a little purple, but I promise they're navy. They match kind of what we do. But they kind of look like the night sky, like the Kansas night sky.
There's some
a little
speckles.
bit. There's some speckles in it.
Mm-hmm.
They're real pretty. And I really like it.
Welcome to Ask a Kansan,
a podcast where we're amplifying, connecting, and uncovering Kansas.
And today we have an episode with an interesting guy. His name is Rolf Potts.
Yes. And Rolf is a native Kansan that has been doing some really cool things that you don't think most Kansans do.
Such as travel writing and screenwriting and other stuff as well. Rolf is just an interesting guy. So without any further ado, here's Rolf. Well, welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah. Come on.
Thanks, guys. All right.
How's it going?
It's going good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for being on the podcast today. We like to start by having our guests introduce themselves for our audience. So would you be as kind to do that, please?
Yeah, I'm Rolf Potts. I'm a 4th or 5th generation Kansan, grew up in Wichita. I'm best known as a travel writer and author, which is something I've been doing for a long time. And actually the world of travel media has changed so much since I got my first byline. The magazines I dreamed of writing about when I was young don't exist anymore. And so now I'm navigating that world, but still doing travel writing. I also teach writing, most notably at the Paris writing workshops every summer in Europe. I'm married to Kiki, who I just watched you interview before, before me. And I'm excited to come and talk about all manner of things, including Kansas.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to kind of go back to your childhood briefly. So you're the son of 2 school teachers from Wichita. Your mom, Alice, taught 2nd grade for over 30 years, and your dad, George, taught high school biology. So how did growing up in a household of educators shape the way you see the world and tell stories about it?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. It made me realize that curiosity is everything, you know. Like my parents taught kids to be curious because if you're curious, then you can sort of educate yourself, right? But if you can be curious, then you get excited about things. And so I've said that as a travel writer, curiosity has served me really well because you become curious about wherever you are instead of looking for what you're supposed to see when you go to a place. And I read about in my most recent book that some of my best tools as a travel writer have been being raised by teachers, because I used to go on field trips with my science teacher dad to Kansas. I'm like, there's nothing here. He's like, well, actually, the grass you see have roots that go 20 feet down. And under those roots, there's dinosaur bones from when Kansas was an ocean. And so awareness, I think, is one of my biggest blessings and privileges, you know, that I had parents that were educators who I would come home from school and learn more from them and sort of foster that sense of creativity. And so it's fun. My dad is 86 and he has a YouTube channel about sustainable energy. So
yeah, I'm curious, like how early did the travel bug bite? You know, was that in elementary school or where did it come from?
Yeah, it's something that I just sort of grew up assuming that you lived for summer vacation when you went on summer vacation. And so I went to Coffee County in eastern Kansas, where my mother's family was from. I went to Colorado, like my wife, Kiki. I sort of had a childhood that was spent the summers in Colorado, usually on the Front Range near Colorado Springs. And I just it was part of my happiness. You know, travel was something that I just loved to do, but it's something I didn't really feel like I had permission to do. It felt like it was the reign of, you know, or the realm of counterculture people from California or rich people or something that you did when you're given permission to, at the end of your life, to travel. And so my first and most well-known book, Vagabonding, is sort of a letter to my teenage self to say, no, you just have to give yourself permission. It's not something that you buy, it's something you give to yourself. And so I think, the earliest seeds of travel were very near, but I didn't realize that I could travel internationally. And since then, I've traveled a lot. But I sort of had to get past those first apprehensions about thinking I couldn't before I allowed myself to do so.
And how about writing? When did you realize that writing was going to be a part of your profession, I guess?
Also similar, I wasn't sure how I could be a writer, how I could have permission to be a writer. But I always loved writing and being creative. When I was 7 years old, I wrote a book about dinosaurs, which is sort of a little boy thing to do. You write about what interests you. I hand illustrated it. But then as I got older, I started reading Stephen King stories and started writing horror stories. And then I liked reading Dave Barry, who's probably a columnist for the Miami Herald back in the 80s, before you guys' time. And so I started writing columns for my school newspaper, and just sort of what I enjoyed reading, I would try to write a version of what I would read. Eventually that led to my earliest bylines, which I was in my late 20s, really, before I got any serious bylines. That dovetailed with travel, and travel writing has been my milieu ever since. I've done other kinds of writing, but people know me as a travel writer, and it's such an exciting thing to write about.
Now, when you say travel writing, I imagine some people are thinking like guidebooks, and that's not what you're talking about. Could you kind of spell that out for us?
Yeah, so I write what would be called probably memoiristic travel writing. When I teach my travel writing classes, we talk about the different categories of travel writing. You have guidebook writing or service writing. You have travel news. You have travel social media, but then you have more memoiristic, personally slanted travel writing, and that's sort of what I've leaned into. My second book, Marco Polo Didn't Go There, was a collection of travel essays that I've written. I'm working on a new book, which is more reported. And the great thing about that kind of travel writing, which I don't know if I would be a very good guidebook writer. I'd be too busy following whatever interests me than to find out how much it costs to stay at this hotel. But travel writing is that kind of memoiristic travel writing. It splits the line between reported journalism and personal memoir. And personal memoir can often be personal at the expense of the outside world. And journalistic writing can be reportorial at the expense of the personal. There's that old joke about the journalist who went into a bar to get a drink, and he got shot in the shoulder, and he staggered across the street and wrote, "A journalist was allegedly shot this week at a bar across the street from the newspaper." Like, the rules of journalism don't allow you to be personal, when in fact admitting that your point of view is a part of what you're seeing, I think, is a part of honesty. And so I think one interesting thing that travel writers have is we're in a liminal space. We're traveling in cultures that are not our own. So we can't speak as experts about other cultures, be it Papua New Guinea or Western Kansas, right? But it allows you to admit to your reader that you're there, that you are the audience, you are this person, and you are perceiving this place with the fresh eyes of an outsider. And it's been fun. It's been a challenge, but it's such a fascinating genre to be writing for. And one funny thing, when I was first a travel writer years ago in the late 90s, I would get a lot of emails, this is before social media, from people saying, "How do you become a travel writer?" And I didn't know. So I started interviewing a travel writer a month for my website, for rolfpotts.com. I've been doing that for 25 years this year. And
Congrats.
Thanks. Yeah. And it's, everyone from, my heroes like Pico Iyer and Tim Cahill to people like David Gran, who wrote Killers of the Flower Moon and have become quite famous since I interviewed them, to young people and travel bloggers and social media people and YouTubers. And so I've taken pride in being open to interviewing a little bit of everybody on that. And I've learned a lot just by talking to other people about what they think travel writing is. So
we haven't talked about like where you've been to tell these stories. So like, I imagine you go some of the places everybody hopefully makes it to in their life, like Paris and London. But also you've been some places far more off the beaten path, so to speak.
Yeah. Actually, I'm one of those weird Americans who didn't go to Europe first. Like, I didn't go on the school trip to like 10 European cities in 3 days type thing. Probably because I did sports in college and just never found time for it. And so I taught English in Korea for a couple of years. Talk about a place that's changed a lot over the years. Like, Korea is this powerhouse in pop culture. And when I was there in the 90s, that was just sort of be like the kids that I tutored are now like studio execs in Korea. It's been really fun to see. And so I actually entered Europe for the first time over the Ural Mountains on the Trans-Siberian train, right?
That's so cool.
Yeah. I'm very proud of that. And I think, and this sort of ties into my Kansasness, is that I sharpened my teeth writing about places that most people overlooked, or most people wouldn't go to, or most people didn't take the trouble to seek out. And so I've been to Paris, but I'm more well known for writing about places like Myanmar or India or Indonesia or, Chile. And so it's been fun to sort of split the difference, to go to these. In fact, I was such a snob. I traveled to so many, I've traveled like 40 or 50 countries before I went to Paris. And I thought, what does Paris have for me? Well, it's the most beautiful city in the world, and I've been there like 25 summers in a row since then. But to be able to have both of that, and you guys have quite recently talked to my wife, Kiki. I had the pleasure of taking her on really hard dirt bag travel in the South Pacific for the first time a couple of summers ago. And it was fun to see. I mean, we slept in, piles of cigarettes and peanut shells on the deck of a Vanuatu ferry because the airline went out of business, right before we went to that part of the world.
Oh, no.
And that's not fun, but it's really memorable. We talk about those nights, and we stayed on an island called Urupiv in the South Pacific with no running water or electricity. And it was not always fun to stay there, but it was super memorable just to sort of to see how people lived there, and how there isn't a lot of helicopter parenting on Urupiv. And the kids just sort of run around in packs because everybody knows each other. And it's sort of a childhood that maybe our great-great-great-great-grandparents had, but we've sort of been modernized out of having this more familial relationship to our own community. And so that's been really fun to see. Yeah, I go to some pretty obscure places, and I love writing about obscure places, but man, I love the Paris and Londons and Buenos Aireses of the world as well.
I'll probably misattribute the quote. I think it's Abraham Lincoln said that the antithesis of ignorance is travel, or something. I don't think I've got it quite right there. But if that's the case, then you're not a very ignorant person.
Right. Well, travel is a great education, and I think that a lot of young people who've read my book and email me are sort of angsty about educational decisions when they're young, and in the UK and Europe, you have a gap year where it's sort of a socially sanctioned time between high school and college. You take a year off, and if you don't travel, then you go and you volunteer or do some sort of manual labor type work. And it gives you a really great perspective because I think sometimes people as 18-year-old freshmen go to college and they don't really know what they want to do. And sometimes you can go off and travel the world and find out what you love to do, or try out what you thought you loved to do, but you don't actually know that you loved. I've taught at some fairly elite colleges on the East Coast, and my students are really nervous about getting fellowships to do this, or getting credit for doing that on the other side of the world. And it's like, just have fun, drink too much and make out with a stranger. It's fine. You're 19 years old, and if you're smart, you're going to wake up. Despite what your parents are worried about, you're going to wake up and you're going to look at the agriculture, or the architecture, or the crafts in that village, and suddenly you're going to be teaching yourself, even sometimes with a sunburn or a hangover, about how beautiful the world is. You're going to learn new languages to flirt with strangers. You're going to suddenly realize that, going back to my parents being educators, you're going to harness your curiosity, and you're just going to find ways to educate yourself. It's so great. And I think there's a lot of ways as Americans that we can find ways to disparage travel as something that's irresponsible. But I think travel, if you allow it to be, can be the best education.
In full disclosure, I'm leaving for a trip today after this. And there's a tension in my marriage.
Okay.
And the tension is between my need for our travel to be spontaneous and unplanned, and my wife's anxiety about that, and how she really, her anxiety is reduced by planning. And so, as you can imagine, she wins, and that's great. And I'm not complaining about that whatsoever, but we plan things pretty meticulously. Yeah. How can we manage that tension between planning trips to where every moment is this choreographed thing we're just acting out, and this thing that can make people anxious of not having a plan and just seeing what happens?
Well, there's a line from my first book, Vagabonding, which is know your options, but not your destiny. So I'm a fan of planning, but as long as you have the confidence and willingness to throw those plans away once you see something wonderful. Because I think planning, sometimes it takes away the anxiety of the uncertainty of travel. But oftentimes, and another thing I say a lot is that we're so much smarter after a few days in a new place that the somewhat informed but mostly ignorant person who is planning online back home is not as smart as this person who's like, holy crap, there's a music festival going on right now. Or there's a, the village kids are playing a soccer game and I was invited to play with them, hello. And so I think one thing that helps with this is planning more time. One thing about vagabonding, which is the philosophy that goes into my first book, is it's long-term travel. It's traveling for, a month instead of 4 days. It's traveling for a year instead of a month. It's giving yourself permission to travel more slowly. And I think that sometimes if we see travel as more of a confined experience, we see it as a consumer option. And so we bring our consumer anxieties into it. And so if you can find a way to slow down, maybe do less and experience more, just slow down and relax and check fewer things off the checklist, then you don't have to worry as much about planning in advance. And I don't want to disparage your wife's approach, because that probably is how she gives herself permission to travel too. Yep. But the more you do it and the slower you go, the more you realize that, okay, we know everything that we could do in this village. Now, what do we really want to do? Because there's one thing about learning about a place, but there's another thing about smelling it. And suddenly it's like, is that a pastry shop? Let's go to that pastry shop. Let's cancel our plans to do this on this day, and let's eat a pastry and sit at the edge of the village and see what's going on. Tell me where you're going.
I'm going to Australia.
Have you been there before?
I have been fortunate and have. My wife is not. So.
Okay.
And we're going a few different places than I've been. So.
It's a very user-friendly place, in part because, most people speak English, and Australians are great travelers and very gregarious, friendly people. So you're in for a treat.
Kansas Wesleyan is proud to be the educational crossroads of North Central Kansas. As a partner of Ask a Kansan, we share the desire to build our communities and to discover what makes our region special. Learn more about the power of and at kwu.edu. In our previous episode with your wife, Kiki, we kind of heard how you guys met and the beginnings of your relationship. I know it kind of came out of COVID and all of that. Could you just kind of give us your perspective?
I want to know your perspective on this.
Well, it's funny that Kiki traveled around the world and was also very peripatetic, not living in one place. But I actually got my land here in tandem with my parents who lived next door to me in 2005. So last year was my 20th anniversary of living in Instilling County. But I was I'm sad to say, living like an expatriate in Saline County, like sometimes the expatriates, they go to a place, but they don't really become a part of the culture. They hang out with other people that are like them. Before I met Kiki, I dated a woman in New York for a long time and another one in London for a long time. And so I sort of came to Kansas and I enjoyed being sort of a hermit and a misanthrope and like going, for drinks or, to shop at the DAV or the Central Mall or whatever. But I didn't really commit myself to this community in a way that I could have. And so this was a family place, but not necessarily a place where I sought to get community. So long story short, after years of living here and not really being committed to a place, I was stuck here during COVID during the winter, met Kiki on a dating app online. And, it went from hello to will you marry me very quickly. We were married literally a year to the day after we had our first date. But then suddenly Kiki's like, well, why don't you know that many people in this community? And so she's like, there's a bakery in Salina you've never been, And so suddenly I was being shamed by this woman I loved into realizing that I could be more a part of the community I'd been living near, but not as a part of for a long time. And there were some years when I was based in Kansas that I would be overseas or in other places for 9 months a year. Or when I was teaching for my Ivy League schools, I was gone, for semesters at a time. But then suddenly, one of the great joys of meeting her was that suddenly I could reinvent my way of being in this place that I'd lived for a long time. So it's been a fun experience, and we've been growing together in this place that we really love.
So the theme of this month of podcasts is filmmaking, and we haven't gotten to that yet. And so I figured now is as good a time as any. Was filmmaking and films in general part of your life prior to meeting Kiki?
Oddly enough, it was. Years ago, at the very beginning of my writing career, this is like level 5 Rolf Potts trivia, I lived in a van and traveled.
Sorry.
What's that?
Down by the river.
Down by the river. No, yeah. And I'm of that generation where I watched those Saturday Night Lives with Matt Foley. Now they call it hashtag van life. It's a very fashionable Instagram thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah, no, I was just a
dirtbag. A little bit.
I was just a dirtbag sleeping in a van with my buddy and traveling around. I tried to write a book about it and I failed, in part because I was pretty good at writing sentences, but I wasn't very good at telling stories. And so it wasn't until I studied screenwriting that I realized that there's a storytelling structure that should be superimposed on anything. So I actually taught myself to be a good essay writer by learning screenwriting. I wrote a screenplay, like a really bad Pulp Fiction ripoff in 1995 for a company called The Asylum, who years later made the Sharknadoes franchise.
I was going to say, I've
heard of that.
Yeah. And so it's so funny. God bless those guys. But yeah, I was writing a script for them, not really knowing. I was like writing a screenplay and like reading books about screenplays at the same time. And I never became a screenwriter through that avenue, but I learned a lot about storycraft through that I still teach to my students in Paris every summer. And so yeah, that screenwriting has been on my radar for a long time. And I've written, but not had produced feature-length screenplays before. I wrote a screenplay about a baseball game in Wichita in 1925 that made it to the finalist of the Austin Film Festival back in 2017. This is before I met Kiki. And so that craft has always interested me. But then once I met her, then it's like, well, let's make a movie together. And so we made a short film, and that's been fun. It's been another crash course, but it's been a really fun way to take storycraft into a new direction, using a kind of writing that I had experience in, but not really in the applied way. And it was so funny to co-write that script with her, because she had been on so many movie sets and, dramatic stages and TV sets as well. And so she had a perspective from a professional, someone who's been using a script in front of a camera. And so that gave me a new perspective. It was really fun. And again, speaking about how travel can be a good education in life, I think making a movie with your actress wife can be a good education in filmmaking, right?
Mm-hmm. What was that transition between like just writing the script and then having to produce? Because you kind of step into a whole nother role. Right. Well, I think part of being independent, like for years, like even though I was a finalist at Austin, and actually I was a semifinalist at the Nickel, which is the Academy, the big Oscars competition every year. And that and a nickel will leave them with 5 cents, right? That you can either ask permission to have companies produce your script, or you can write a script and find a way to produce it yourself. And so Kiki and I co-wrote the script, but we also co-executive produced it. And an executive producer can have a gazillion definitions. It can be someone who has $100,000 to give, and then they get an EP credit. There's sometimes a well-known filmmaker will put their name as an EP on a project to sort of help the profile of that. So like when Kevin Wilmot, the great Kansas filmmaker, made CSA, which is a wonderfully hilarious satire, Spike Lee said, I'm going to put my name on that as an EP, as an executive producer, to raise the profile of that film. Neither of those apply to our job as EP. Ours was just trying to raise money, trying to make it happen, trying to find a director and an actual producer and actors and crew who could make it happen. And so for all of the dozens of ways an executive producer can be defined, our way of EP was, we wrote the script we love, let's find a way to shoot it in Kansas. And because it was Kiki's script, she wanted to shoot it with as many Kansas women as possible. And, she, as she said in your podcast, she testified before Topeka about film incentives. We don't have them. So she refused to shoot in Oklahoma or Arkansas, which have more film incentives. And so it's like, how do we scrape together a production in this place where we love? And we literally shot many parts of it on our own property, because it comes from an incident that happened on our property involving a game camera, which is the name of our film. And so then, yeah, I learned so much. And I think this is a very 21st century thing too, that 50 years ago, it would have been astronomically expensive and there would have been no crew at all. Whereas now in the digital age, it's more and more possible to go DIY, to do some sort of do-it-yourself production. And we have the advantage is that I've been a professional writer for years, and I've been published by some big publishers in New York, and she's been
on TV shows that people watched, even by accident. Law and Order, that's always playing somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
And so we were able to bring a professional perspective to it, but it was still very do-it-yourself. We brought in Brie Elrod, who's a Kansas actor who's been in some great production, including Red Rocket, which was by Sean Parker. Is it Sean Parker? That's not the Facebook guy. That's the Sean Baker. Sean Baker, yeah, who won the Oscar for Nora. So Brie was in his previous movie. So we were able to bring a really high-level SAG-certified cast, and then a real hard-scrabble crew of mostly Kansas women, but then some people from Arkansas who our director brought in from a university she teaches at there. And it was an amazing experience, and it's been fun. Short films are not usually reviewed, but I swear to you, like 2 weeks ago, I opened Kansas History Magazine, and our short film was reviewed just after Somebody Somewhere and just before Wicked. Nice. and it was a very positive review. Yeah. But it was the kind of review, it's like, gosh, we should talk to our producer, Carolina, put this on the poster. Like it was a very warm review. And so it was so hard, and it was so not cheap, and it was so difficult, but it was such a satisfying experience. And we have that sort of as a calling card now. There's different things that short films can do, and one of them is a calling card for what you can do as a writer, as an actor, as producers, as people who want to represent Kansas, as people who can say, this is what Kansas looks like in front of the camera. It doesn't have to be a backdrop in California like it was the case for Dorothy, or the wide open plains of Alberta, Canada, as it is for Superman, that you can shoot movies about Kansas in Kansas and bring a truth to that narrative that you wouldn't have otherwise. So we're very proud of our short film.
This episode is sponsored by Renaissance Cafe. Serving Northern Italian cuisine prepared with a fresh, contemporary influence, the Renaissance Cafe is one of Kansas's favorite restaurants. Whether you're planning a romantic dinner date, a family celebration, or an intimate meal with friends, the Renaissance provides a unique dining experience with an old-world atmosphere. Open Thursday through Saturday evenings, the Renaissance Cafe is located just south of Salina in Assyria, Kansas. Visit renaissancecafeassyria.com to book your reservation today. You recently put out a documentary, a feature-length documentary on your YouTube channel. That's really excellent. Can you first of all just tell our audience a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's called Kansas Never Plays Itself, which is a callback to a famous essay film called Los Angeles Plays Itself, which is by a film critic named Tom Anderson, who uses found footage from movies to sort of show how Los Angeles gets fictionalized in movies. That Los Angeles is sort of this metaphorical Hollywood, but what's it like to really live in Los Angeles outside of the entertainment industry? And his argument there is that Los Angeles always sort of has this warped sensibility. So I watched that film essay and I thought, wow, you think you have it bad in Los Angeles? Try being from Kansas, where you could be on an island in the South Pacific and people will say, oh, you're not in Kansas anymore, are you? And so we're just up against this mythos. And so after having made the short film with Kiki and being an essayist myself and a travel writer who spends a lot of time reporting across cultures about other places, I thought, I need to pay homage, yet do a version of Los Angeles Plays Itself, but make a film called Kansas Never Plays Itself and explore what it means when you have Kansas's reputation hinged on movies that were set here but not shot here. So when Kansas does show up at all, which it usually doesn't, it's usually some cowboy movie that was shot in California, or it's a dystopian science fiction movie that was shot in Canada. It wasn't actually shot here. So, and this is something to come up against as a travel writer, is like, what is it like? How do you portray a play, what it's like to be in a place? And so it ended up being a feature-length documentary, 73-minute long feature film that through different lenses explores what it means to live in Kansas, what people see when they see Kansas on the screen, and how that differs to a certain extent. And there's a lot of tangents I go down to, but like there's this idea that Kansas is just sort of these wholesome white people, and it's like our most famous filmmaker, one of our most accomplished filmmakers is Gordon Parks, who made his first film, The Learning Tree, was this very involved drama about being black in Kansas, right? And so I think if we just assume that the wholesome Kansas, even in Cold Blood, which is about a true crime about Kansans who got murdered, Kansans are also very static, that even the movies that have been made about the making or the writing, Capote, for example, which is a wonderful Oscar-nominated movie, that's about the people who came to Kansas and killed Kansans, right? Nothing against Truman Capote, but it's like people live here in real time when they're not getting murdered or being swept up by tornadoes, right? And so how can we portray something true about this place in a way that goes beyond the stereotypes that we associate with it? And so that is almost a mission that I have as a travel writer. Sure, I can go to Paris and write about the Eiffel Tower and the Champs-Élysées and eating escargot. But what is it like to go to the 18th arrondissement and eat at a Senegalese restaurant that is just as Parisian as the rest of Paris, right? And so I think it's looking for nuances, and it's looking for the truer textures of a place, and it's realizing that a place isn't reduced to one story. A place contains multitudes, and we can bring many stories out of it. And it sort of ties into what you talked about with Kiki about film incentives. If you can incentivize filming, bringing crews to film here, then Kansas will always be represented by a backdrop in Culver City, California, or a beautiful prairie that just happens to be in Canada and not Kansas, And so I don't think this is even something that falls along political lines, that it's not a liberal or conservative issue. It's just like, well, let's just show Kansas as it is. Let's find ways to tell Kansas stories in Kansas and invite people to our beautiful state. I know that in your interview with her, you talked about beauty or difficult beauty versus easy beauty. And Kansas has a little bit of easy beauty, a lot of step outside in the Flint Hills and say, wow, this is beautiful. But it also has some more hard-won beauty. And I mean, I'm preaching to the choir. This is Ask a Kansan, right? But I think that the more ways we can open our doors to storytellers and the more ways that we can slow down and be receptive to a place like Kansas, the better stories we'll tell about it and the better it will be represented. One thing that's often talked about these days is the attention economy, that our attention is always going to here. And one of the reactions I've gotten to Kansas Never Plays Itself is that, why did you write about place? There's so many things like sense of place. Like, that's weird. Why not talk about movies or other things? And it's like, well, we're losing our sense of place, that our lives are going to these screens that we stare at all the time, and being embodied in a place is so special. And so the attention economy is part of a place where we're looking down at a screen, the metaphorical black mirror, instead of looking out at where we are. And so if we can slow down and pay attention to where we are and not just move to a place, but let that place move through us, then we're more likely to be receptive to it and to appreciate where you are. I think another thing that Kiki talked about in the interview is that people sort of make excuses for being in Kansas. They sort of apologetically say they're from Kansas, but why not celebrate Kansas? Which is why it's cool to be on Ask a Kansan, right? Because there is things we should sit up and take pride, because there are so many things to be proud of here.
One of the things you just said is so close to a question that I had prepared in a different question, but I'm gonna read this. It has been said that in storytelling, setting begets character and character begets plot. So what goes missing from the stories we tell about the world when one place stands in for another? And I do want your reaction to that. But we were talking to Ken Spurgeon the other day in an earlier episode in this series about Sod and Stubble and producing that film in Downs, and about how he and his casting crew experienced the people of Downs. And as I reflect on that, and this isn't just about like the backdrop. It's not just about what's going on, in the camera's view. It's also about how the place you produce influences the thing you're producing, where, they experience the hospitality of some of the descendants of the characters in their film, and how that changes the way you play a character and changes the way you shoot the movie. And so, I guess I don't have a question I'm asking. I'm just saying that, I think it's not just about like the beautiful field in the background of the shot.
Yeah, no, I think that quote is from maybe Joseph Brodsky, I think a novelist. In my video essay, I quote Eudora Welty and Susan Sontag and some other people too about the relationship of place to storytelling. But yeah, if setting begets character, Kin's film is a good example of that, because this is literally about people who go and are beholden to place. You know, they're settlers and they're sitting in this place and they can't avoid the weather. You know, they can't look at their smartphone and see that there's a plague of locusts coming or whatever. And so I think that the truer the story is, or the true stories come out of landscape. I think, like I was talking about Gordon Parks' The Learning Tree, that's basically based on his youth in a place. And if you watch that story, The Learning Tree, it's about how the rule of law doesn't always apply to everybody along racial lines. It's about how some people get, stereotyped in ways that other people don't. And that came out of his experience of Kansas. And there's something very true about The Learning Tree in that sense. And so I absolutely think that it's hard. Another tangent I go on in the video essay is, indigenous stories. And Sherman Alexie, the great Native American novelist, talked about how for most Native Americans, they only feel comfortable telling stories about what they can see and experience. That basically telling stories about geographies that you don't know is telling stories as a white person. I think we forget that sometimes. I bring in our experience of going to the South Pacific and just how a lot of the stories that are told in villages on Uapiva or Malekula are specific to village ceremonies. And so I guess we live in this mass media world where we're more and more, the division between stories and place is getting wider and wider because we see places as backdrops. Another thing I touch on that is AI, right? Now we can have AI can invent not just landscapes, but people. I mean, that's part of what the actors strike was a few years ago, that literally you can make an AI character now. And we've sort of dehumanized so many aspects of storytelling. And a lot of it goes back to that idea of seeing places as backdrops. And so I think one way to rehumanize storytelling in the face of AI and in the face of the attention economy is setting our stories in embodied places and drawing on the wisdom of those places to tell the stories we tell.
We can travel a lot as humans in this day and age. We can see the world. We can meet people from vastly different backgrounds than our own. But we can have a few places that we maybe call home, but it's a finite number. So for you and I, Kansas is home. You have made a career out of creating destinations out of places that not everyone would think of as a destination. So how can we show the world that Kansas is also one of those destinations?
We can tell stories that diversify people's understanding of what Kansas is. I mean, a lot of people come to Kansas and they go to either the Oz Museum in Wamego or Dorothy's house in Liberal because they think that's what they want to experience in Kansas. And so I think just sort of conveying that subtlety, telling our own stories. Also, we no longer need to go through a middleman. We don't have to go through Hollywood studios to tell our stories. So we can make a fun video on YouTube and upload it and see who's watching, right? And I think just being unapologetic about being from here and being as part of a global conversation, because I joke that I used to be on the Wikipedia page for global nomads, for digital nomads. Well, I joke that I was taken off because they realized I lived in Kansas and not in Cancun or some more exotic place. Funny. But we can be completely global and completely Kansan at the same time. That we no longer live in that Kansas landscape that Ken depicted in Sod and Stubble. That we can digitally, Kiki can audition literally for a TV show that's on HBO from our spare room in Kansas, and it looks the same as an audition from anyone who's auditioning anywhere else in the world. And so we, as Kansans, we give ourselves permission to join the global conversation and not be apologetic for living here, and realize that some people might be a little bit jealous. I wasn't as beholden to New York as Kiki was, but oftentimes I would go to New York where they sort of expect people from the provinces to apologize. And instead of saying, oh yeah, I'm from Kansas, but oh, don't worry, I'm a New Yorker now, I would say, oh no, I have land in Kansas. I go back to Kansas. I love Kansas. And finally people just said, Rolf, you're so authentic. That was their word. Here's the A word. That instead of apologizing like so many other people would have, because I didn't apologize, they said, all right, well, maybe there's more to Kansas than I realized there were. So that's my encouragement to Kansas is is don't apologize. Be authentic. Represent the place that this is and all of its glorious complexity and nuance and diversity.
For some reason, when you said thanks for being authentic, it just makes me think of like the Southern, oh, bless her heart.
There was sort of an element of sort of patting you on the head because they expect you to sort of apologize for whatever stereotype they have embodied, I'm sorry that you think our politics is regressive or you think that our landscape is boring, but no, it's like, oh yeah, I live in Kansas and I look forward to going back. And so then it's like, oh, you're authentic. I will say that, I teach a class in Paris every summer and I live in Kansas and I invite all my friends to visit me in both places. Way more people go to Paris.
Oh yeah. Sure.
Even though it's a lot farther. And people have literally said to me, Paris just seems so much closer than Kansas. And so that's my little contribution is not apologizing and inviting people to visit and see this authentic side of me here in Kansas.
Well, I love it. And thank you for taking time
to
come and be on the podcast today. I guess that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having the podcast. I don't ever get to talk about Kansas on podcasts. So this has been fun.
Actually, before we go, where can we find all your work?
Go to rolfpotts.com. This website has existed for almost 30 years. 28 years old, my website is. It predates all my social media handles, which are linked from rolfpotts.com. So Instagram, YouTube, you can find by way of rolfpotts.com, which is older than probably some of the guests on this podcast.
Maybe. Want to spread your organization's message across Kansas? Consider becoming a sponsor. Ask a Kansan has a unique focus on Kansas and its people. By sponsoring our podcast, your organization can reach people from Canarado to Kansas City, Wichita to Washington, and all the great places in between. We have a variety of sponsorship packages available to fit your budget and needs. For more information, visit askakansan.com/sponsorships or call us at 785-571-9507. Thanks for joining us for that episode with Rolf.
Yeah, it was a fun conversation with Rolf. I think he has thought more deeply about kind of the sense of place in storytelling than probably anybody else. and it's really cool to hear about his documentary that he put out a few weeks ago.
Yeah. He posted on Facebook a while back about a desk that he got from the DAV. And how it's been his writing desk for however many years. I don't remember, but it's like 15 plus years. And he finally was able to remodel and gave that desk back to the DAV so somebody else could start writing their own stories. And I just love that because it's such a Kansas thing.
So Rolf and Kiki, I'm not sure which one it is. I think it's Rolf's. Yeah, it's Rolf's dad. Rolf's dad is George Potts, I think.
That sounds familiar.
And yeah, because we talked with him about doing some work for them a while back.
Yeah.
And he does this thing called Energy Green Grandpa.
Oh yeah.
And it's great. I don't know how old he is, but he's an older fellow.
Yeah.
And he's very passionate about encouraging kids and families to be greener in their lifestyle. And so I just think there's such an interesting family and everything they do is filled with passion. So,
very much so. Well, along that note, I have another segment for you. Two truths and a lie.
I really like this segment. This is one of my favorites.
So they they start easy and they get a little hard. At least I think they do. Maybe it's just me. So first one, I'm going to give you the city and then you have to tell me, which ones are the truths and which one is the lie for each city. So first one, Scott City. So home to a state park built around an ancient inland sea fossil site. It also sits near one of the largest natural lakes in western Kansas. And Austin, our graphic designer, is from there. So which one is the lie and which one are the truths?
Okay.
I should have had my little...
Pretty sure Austin is actually from there. So not that one. Sits near one of the largest lakes. That feels wrong to me. Okay, I'm going to go with 2 is the lie. It sits near one of the largest natural lakes in Kansas.
Correct. It does not. So with the first one, so it mentions what did I say?
Fossil bed.
Yeah, the fossil bed. So it's actually at Lake Scott State Park. So the park is one of the most historic locations in Kansas. More than 26 I can't talk today.
Archaeologists?
Archaeological. Yeah, that one.
Mm-hmm.
Sites have been documented in and adjacent to the park. The remains of the northernmost known. My gosh, I cannot talk today. This is great. Northernmost known Native American pueblo.
Oh, wow.
I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but a National Historic Landmark are located in the park, and also the Steel Home, which is the dwelling of the original settlers on the area, has been preserved as much like it's over 100 years old. And it's about 1 mile south of the park is Battle Canyon, which is the location of the last Native American battle in Kansas. A lot is happening around the Scott City area. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's Scott City.
Okay. Nice.
Next one. Chanute. So Chanute. So 2 truths and a lie. Chanute was named after Octave Chanute, a civil engineer and aviation pioneer who influenced early flight research. Chanute is the hometown to the home of a museum that celebrates famous explorers and filmmakers. Or Chanute once served as a major shipping port along the Arkansas River, which served as a vital point for commerce and military supplies. So which one is the lie?
I am pretty confident that Chanute predates 1900, which means it predates aviation, which means it can't be number 1. Am I wrong?
You're wrong.
No, so it's the last one.
It's the last one.
Wow. So when was Chanute founded?
Chanute was founded. Oh, I don't know when Chanute was founded. I don't have that in my notes here. We'll have to look that one up.
An Octave. What an epic name.
Yeah, but that does ring true. There is a museum in Chanute that mentions Octave Chanute.
Wow. He sounds like a Roman soldier or something.
Yes. My thing that I thought was the most interesting was the home to the museum that celebrates the famous explorers and filmmakers.
Osa and I can't remember. Abe, maybe. No, that's
Martin and Osa Johnson.
Martin and Osa, yeah.
I did not know this. I thought I found like a gem. I'm surprised.
No, I think we were thinking about using them for another segment. So
were we?
We haven't made the segment, but we talked about it.
Okay.
But you're right. They're fascinating.
Yeah. So in the first half, it's so weird how people on the interwebs wrote this, but in the first half of the last century, an American couple from Kansas named Martin and Osa Johnson captured the public's imagination through their films and books of adventure in exotic faraway lands. They were pioneering documentary filmmakers, photographers, writers, and explorers. From 1917 to 1936, the Johnsons traveled across Africa, Borneo. Sure, that one. In the South Seas, documenting the native peoples and animals they encountered along with their own experiences. Through popular movies such as Simba, that came out in 1928, and Baboona, Baboona, Baboona.
Can't help you there.
That came out in 1935, and best-selling books still in print, including I Married Adventure, that came out in 1940. Martin and Osa popularized camera safaris and a passion for African wildlife conservation for generations of Americans. Their legacy is a record of the cultures and animals in remote areas of the world which have undergone profound changes.
About 15, maybe even 20 years ago, my parents and I went to that museum.
Oh, really?
And
you can go to the next slide. It'll show it.
Awesome museum. Definitely worth a visit, and truly remarkable people. And I have a thing for couples that make documentaries together. There's another great documentary about a couple like that, about volcanologists.
Oh yeah.
I don't remember the name of it.
It's a National Geographic.
Yeah, it's so good. So good. So
doc. It's really good.
Tragic. That one's tragic.
That one came out.
Martin and Osa's story is way more positive. So yeah.
So yeah, I just thought there's like so much happening in Chanute.
Yes.
And here's what's funny. All these towns, I literally just went on Google and got to the map, and I'm like, okay, If you haven't realized by now, I'm picking one from like each corner of the state. I'm like,
Ooh.
what's a tiny town that I probably have never heard of? But I actually have heard of Chanute. So I was like, well, let's see what's in Chanute.
Yeah.
And then we went from there. So, yeah. Okay. Next one.
Ooh.
Sabetha. All right. Sabetha is known for its strong manufacturing presence, including companies that produce equipment used nationwide. Sabetha was founded as a river trading post along the Missouri River and was a resting place for people traveling west. I should have put west. It was actually west. I got my things wrong. Well, I guess you could go east. They traveled. And then the naming of Sabetha will always bring a controversy, and the town claims both stories.
Okay. I'm pretty sure I know that number 1 is true. Because I know I know that's a thing. 3 sounds, I'm guessing 2 is the
2 is
lie. Yeah.
because I can't write properly. Yeah, so number 2 is incorrect. So the naming controversy.
Mm-hmm. Hear it.
So this one's pretty long, so just bear with me because it is a pretty good story. And so this comes from actually Sabetha's city website. So then the naming of Sabetha will always bring on a controversy. There are several versions of how Sabetha got its name, each backed by its own advocates. One story is, let's see, I'm trying to summarize this, but I don't think I can. Mr. William B. Slolson, Slosson, Slolson, one of the original settlers of Albany, wrote to George W. Martin, second secretary of the Kansas Historical Society as follows. General Jim Lane had dug a well in the edge of Brown County close to the... Why can we not give names normal names? I'm going to struggle through this whole thing. Nemaha, Nemaha, Nemaha County line, had stuck a stake and marked it Sabetha, presumably because he camped there over Sunday. That is how Sabetha
like
got
Sabbath.
its name, Sabbath,
Oh.
and got on the early maps as Sabetha. So supposedly someone put a stick in the ground, called it a day.
If it had been Tuesday, it would have been Tuesday.
Tuesday-tha.
Tuesday-tha.
Okay, second version. So perhaps the best story is this one. This one is lengthy. Early in the 50s, and this is 1850s. Okay. Early in the 1850s, a tall, slim, wrinkled man of middle age, a bachelor, came to the vicinity of Sabetha on his way to California. The bachelor had a wonderful dream of a gold mine in California and was trying to make the trip to find it alone. Hence, he was a bachelor. He had an elaborate map showing the location of the gold and the typography of the country surrounding. When he had traveled with his ox team from St. Joseph to near the present site of Sabetha, the traveler met with misfortune. One of his oxen died. This fateful... Sorry, that was a little dramatic. This fateful incident led to the naming of Sabetha. The man was a Greek scholar and well-versed in mythical lore, also a student of the Bible. This bachelor had many talents. I don't know why he was a bachelor not married yet.
Despite being wrinkled.
Despite being wrinkled. His oxen were named Hercules and, again, Greek people. Pelleas? Pelleas?
Sorry, can't help you there. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, the P1 passed away on Sunday, and the bachelor was obliged to remain here. He pitched a tent and dug a well. The well he named Sabbaton, the Greek word for Sabbath, in honor of the day. The traveler had 2 gallons of whiskey, which he peddled to the few settlers and passerbys. When the whiskey was gone, he went back to St. Joseph and procured more, becoming a full-fledged bartender.
That is a... And it goes on?
It goes on. There's more. People came in to drink at the Sabetha well, a well as well as the Traveler's Bar. The well water was exceptionally fine, and the Sabetha well became known from St. Joe to California, as it was a direct route for travelers to the Golden State. The traveler, having partially realized his dreams of wealth through his gold liquor trade, returned to his home in the East.
That was so detailed.
Like,
I like that the controversial naming of the town
is like
can
someone
agree
put
that
it.
it has to do with the day of Sunday.
So, yeah.
Well,
So,
very interesting.
yeah, there you go.
We'd have to have a historian help us decipher those stories.
Yeah. There's more information on the Sabetha city page. They have multiple different histories and fun stuff. So, highly recommend you check that out. Okay,
Yeah.
next. All right, Pinocchio. Pinocchio?
I do not know anything about
Yeah,
this. I've never heard this one before.
P-E-N-O-P-E-E. Yeah, this one I like dug around in northwestern Kansas for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's known for its strong Oh, I forgot to copy and paste. Sorry, hold on. That's not on the... Okay. Yeah. I can read it from my phone. I just forgot to copy and paste it.
No
Okay,
worries.
sorry, my bad. Okay, Pinocchio. So, there is a giant man made of stone that is the largest known human effigy in Kansas. It's known... the town was once named Reford, but had been renamed after the Pinocchio Mountains near Lake Superior. Pinocchio is the county seat of Graham County. So which is the lie and which is the truth?
Did you say Grand County?
Graham.
Graham.
Like Graham County.
Yeah, I was going to say that I thought the town was the lie because I've never heard of a Grand County. Yeah, this is a totally new place to me. Okay,
Okay,
you can
I'll read
cut
them. I'm
this.
going to read
Please
them again.
Again. Sorry.
So number one, there's a giant
Yeah, the
man-made
effigy.
of stone that is the largest known human effigy in Kansas.
Mhm.
2, the town was once named Redford, but had been renamed after the Pinocchio Mountains near Lake Superior. Or 3, Pinocchio is the county seat of Graham County.
I'm going to say number 3 is the lie.
You're correct, because Hill City is the county seat for
Ah.
Graham County. So Pinocchio has a very interesting kind of stuff to it.
Oh, so this is more like a pre-colonial
Yes.
effigy. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. I had no idea there even was this in Kansas.
So the first thing is it was named Reford, Reford, but it had to be renamed because the mail kept getting mixed up with Rexford.
That's where my wife's from, so that's hilarious.
Yes.
Huh.
So to prevent any confusion, they renamed the town. It is also thought that a battle between a large number of Cheyenne Indians and the U.S. cavalry took place between Pinocchio and Hoxie in 1857. A sod fort was erected to house the wounded for the winter, but the exact location of this battle has not been determined. So, but really what we're here for is the Pinocchio Stone Man. So this is a 60 by 30 limestone cobble outline in the shape of a man, situated on a high ridge overlooking the South Fork of the Solomon River in Graham County. The stone man lays with...
Yeah, I feel like a description is necessary here in that
Yeah.
this is not like a 3-dimensional thing. It's more of like an outline of a man.
Like if you're looking top down,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like when you think of a crop circle, you can't really see it when you're
Yes.
looking like it. You over top.
Or like the lines in Chile, I think is, yeah.
Yeah. Or if, say, when you're trying to find the Big Dipper up in the sky,
Yeah.
that's kind of what it's like. There's different plot points to it. So it's a 60 by 30 limestone cobble outline in the shape of a man. And let's see, where was he at? Situated on the high ridge overlooking the South Fork of the Solomon River in Graham County, the stone man lays with outstretched arms and legs, staring up at the heavens. At present, and this is as of 2001 is the latest story I could find, or sorry, 2011. It was the only known stone human effigy in Kansas, although many similar to it are found in the Northern Plains region. So yeah, the first written account of the stone man was in 1879 by Professor S.W. Wilston, an explorer sent by the Peabody Museum in Connecticut.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea there was one of these in Kansas. They have the picture we're looking at, if you're listening, they have a photograph, and then they have like a plot next to the photograph of like the approximate location of stones, and then like a visualization of what the intent probably was. And yeah, it's not what you think of when you think of like a European vision of a human. So it's definitely think it would be pre-colonial. Yeah. Very interesting.
I think this was from the Graham County Historical Museum.
Gotcha.
I believe.
Yeah, I'd be curious if this is still visible.
Yeah, I'm super curious too.
Wow.
But yeah, there's Spontaneity for you.
Well, thank you.
I think that's the last one I got.
Yeah.
So
that was fun.
There's your 2 truths and a lie.
Yeah. Well, this brings us to the end of another episode of Ask a Kansan.
Thank you for joining us. Make sure to like and subscribe and leave a review from wherever you are listening from.
Thanks for tuning in, and have a good one.
Bye.